Is this the most bizarre college football season we've ever seen? I have to think it might be, right? Sitting here trying to wrap my mind around the fact that a week ago, Ryan Day was on the field, big brothering Sharon Moore in the snow, telling him to get his players off the field or there was going to be problems. Sharon listened. This dude was the coach of Michigan football. Right now, he's locked up in 1 week. Welcome to Juck on Bucks. Appreciate you for joining me. What is the fallout from all this from the recruiting aspect? Can Ohio State benefit from any of this? I think so, but not in the way you might be thinking. What will the coaching situation be up at Michigan? What are they planning on doing here? Today we discuss all that, as well as yet another Ohio football star chooses to go somewhere else in what's becoming a very common trend. This one kind of flew under the radar. Not here. That's never going to fly under the radar here. But Sharon Moore joins a long list of unbelievable stories, crimes, investigations that have come out of that football program in the last 5 years. There's never been a dirtier program, never been a dirtier period at a particular time at one program in the history of college football. And that statement was true like 3 or 4 instances ago. And I did this episode months ago saying that very thing. And I went through the laundry list of guys that have been arrested. It's 7 now, if we're keeping count. 7 guys arrested since Harbaugh took over. But of course, it's way more than just arrests. You got show causes. I mean, this was 3 months ago. I did this show. The whole show had all the pictures of all these dudes, went through each one of them. And somehow it keeps compounding. We will never see anything like it again. We've never seen anything like it before. The craziest part, there were Michigan fans in the comments of that trying to argue against that statement that we've never seen anything like this in college football, ever. They were trying to equate this to recruiting violations and paying players in the South. Nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. This is not a Buckeye fan's opinion. It is a statement of fact, an absolute cesspool, something we have never seen before. And Ohio State fans know the laundry list by heart, from the on-field cheating, FBI investigations, sting operations, the recruiting violations, the drunk driving terminations. Now this, a head coach, man, the head coach fired for an inappropriate relationship with a staff member who worked under him. And we now know who that staff member is. I don't think there's any reason for me to put her picture or information up. She's deleted her social media accounts, which means she doesn't want people seeing her. And she, in fact, is a victim here, regardless of the consensual relationship that they apparently had. You know, consensual relationships between adults, that's fine. But the reason that you get fired is when you are the superior and the subordinate, right? Like that dynamic, that is not good. That's not good. She was his subordinate, and there's a power dynamic there. And of course, now she's really become the victim, as we know what's happened since then, which was just rumor the last time I was on, but now is apparently no longer rumor. And it's interesting, like these rumors were floating around, and now we've got the dispatch call. And the dispatch call really proves that this is exactly what went on, man. It proves what he did after he got the news. When we look at Ward Manuel, the athletic director at Michigan, like how long have they known about this thing? It appears this investigation started several months ago. How much did you really need to investigate to find out that this was in fact true, that this relationship was going on? We've now seen pictures and videos of the two of them together floating around. And sure, she worked for him, but a lot of people seem to have known this was going on. And it seems to me like they waited to see how things were going to shake out with the season, see how things were going to shake out with the progression of Bryce Underwood. And that didn't go the way they wanted it to. They got a trip to the Citrus Bowl, and they decided, let's go ahead and pull the plug, because there's no way we can fire or justify firing this 9-3 coach. So they scheduled an all coaches meeting. minus Sherrone Moore. And they go into this all coaches meeting, tell these guys the business. Sherrone not going to be around anymore. That meeting includes Kerry Combs, former Ohio State assistant coach, who then was the defensive coordinator, who recently took the position, and I mean like 3 days ago, as the special teams coordinator up there, ruined his reputation with Ohio State fans who loved him. And really, he was a double agent all along, as he posted a picture of him up there at the big house on the field and said, from a fan to now a coach. So his legacy ruined, and he doesn't even get to enjoy the fruits of ruining his reputation, as he is apparently a double agent, and now he doesn't get the job. Also includes Tony Alfrod, who will be out on the street as well. Tony leaves Ohio State. They win a national championship. He misses out on that ring to pull his little move there, his little power move. Tony, who just got done brainwashing Jalen Marshall, a guy he didn't want at Ohio State, into thinking that he was the good guy all along. Sherrone Moore, remember, this was just last week before the game. Ryan Day was the bad guy. And Sherrone Moore, he was all about team first. He was a family guy, a good guy. I wonder what they think about what happened yesterday. So Sherrone Moore, the good guy, catches wind of the all coaches meeting, and allegedly at that point went to the subordinate's house, the one he's been having an affair with. And here is the dispatch call.
Subject just called the caller, told her there's a male at the location and the house attacking her. State's been stalking her for months.
A male at the location attacking her, said he's been stalking her for months.
For the Pittsfield unit's reference to domestic, we just got a call from S1's wife in Ann Arbor saying that the subject is suicidal, reference losing his job today.
Suicidal.
He walked out with a knife. Clear. And just FYI, there's a U of M detective that's going to be making that location as well.
A wife in Ann Arbor says that the suspect is suicidal, and he walked in with a knife. All these rumors were floating around yesterday as I was doing not the original show. The original show I did, all we knew at the time was he had gotten fired for this relationship. I went on Buckeye Huddle at 8 p.m., and this story was floating around. And it sounded so insane. Even though we knew he had been detained, we heard the suicidal thing. And if you call and report a family member as suicidal, they'll detain you. But this story about him going to the house and attacking and having a knife on him, that was floating around social media. And I thought that's not true. That can't possibly be true. That's true. You just heard the guy in the dispatch. By the way, if your job is to be on the phone and dispatch to the police situations of, like extreme emergency situations, like the number one criteria is to pronounce your words, be clear and concise. And that guy sucks at his job. Let's just say that right off the rip. So his wife calls and says he's suicidal. He breaks in apparently to the house. The person who called said that he had a knife. That doesn't mean that he had a knife. That's what that person said. That person also said, who made the call, and we don't know for sure if it is this same girl. We can assume, right? But we don't know for sure. And remember, this is just one side of the story. So this is, none of this has been proven, but clearly this story actually happened. The phone call happened. The police went there. That all happened. And it's just an unbelievable story and an unbelievable amount of poor choices for this guy who ruined, he went out on this rampage with the knife and his life wasn't ruined at that point. His marriage, perhaps ruined. His job ruined. His career ruined. But there is a way to rebound from getting fired for that, right? You can rebound. He's only 38 years old. You still had a coaching career at some point if you wanted it, most likely at some level of football at some point after this blows over. there's grace for something like that. There's no grace for what he chose to make it, right? No more grace now when you chose to make it that. And apparently this dude has been following Instagram models, DMing Instagram models with his Sharon Moore Instagram page, like following several accounts in plain sight for everybody to see. And it's just like, now that we see what kind of guy this dude is, I wonder what Michigan fans think about the fact that this guy immediately reached to erase all those text messages from Connor Stallions. Like, hey, that's this dude's MO, right? We know this guy is a dude who's quick to erase a bunch of text messages. We know how he gets down now. Dude with young daughters at home. This guy had the opportunity of a lifetime, man. Sharon Moore, a former offensive coordinator for Jim Harbaugh, who ran a Stone Age offense, a guy who in 2024 on the open market would have commanded the attention of a MAC level head coaching job, maybe lower level Big 12 coaching job, and a young guy who got the opportunity of a lifetime to be the head coach at a blue blood program, the University of Michigan, a place where he had built up equity with the fan base. They loved him. The players loved him, and he threw it all away. Threw it all away for what? Well, you know for what. Year one, they finished on a great note, beating Ohio State, beating Alabama. You land a top 5 class. They pump all this money into the recruiting operation, get you Bryce Underwood, and in year 2, he goes 9-3. Bryce Underwood doesn't improve at all. At all. He doesn't have the foresight to hire a quarterback coach for him, someone who can really, teach him how to play properly. They had a weak schedule, but there is something to be said for winning all the games that you should win. And it's clear that Moore had a lot of growing pains on the job, end-of-game blunders, made poor hires. But most importantly, I think, was the lack of development for Underwood. And the brass at Michigan is watching this with this story in their back pocket, my opinion, and waiting to see how the season unfolded. Notice they didn't fire him immediately. Are we supposed to believe that they just came to this conclusion, that this actually happened immediately after the game and signing day? I find that hard to believe. Had he beaten Ohio State and made the playoffs, are they still firing him immediately, or are they holding on to this a little bit longer and waiting for the investigation to conclude? You know what I'm saying? We know how it goes in big-time college football, and this probably isn't specific to Michigan. I think there's a lot of places that would pull some shady stuff with this type of information. Not the second part, not where he goes bananas and becomes criminal, but the first part where he violates morality clauses and takes advantage of his power. But even if things had not worked out for him long-term at Michigan, having that job on his resume, that would have set him up for success in the coaching profession for the rest of his life, right? If he had just gotten fired for not being a good enough coach there. Having that on his resume at his age, and I really think he could have built his career back up if it was just this guy had an affair on his wife with the staffer. At some point, he could have built his career back up, and he chose to lash out the way he did. And it's clear maybe a screw loose going after this, if this is true, right? This is all alleged right now, but just an unbelievable story, man. An unbelievable story, and a guy who just threw it all away. Somebody asked me yesterday in the live chat that I did the first one, and again, this is before we knew about the criminal stuff. They asked, don't I feel bad or about him and his mental health? And the answer to me is no. I feel bad for his family. I feel bad for this girl who's going to get run through the mud now and apparently is now potentially a victim of an assault. As far as him, it seems to me like he got caught, lost something that he didn't want to lose, was devastated, and chose to lash out and make it even more selfish, make it even more about him, right? I'm suicidal. Well, was that really a cry for help, or was that a woe is me, right? I just lost everything because it's my fault. And you don't know for sure, but nah, I don't feel bad for him and his mental health. I feel bad for the family. I do for sure. As we move on to the football aspect of this, Michigan, unfortunately, as an Ohio State fan, I wanted them to hold on to that guy. I think he was in way over his head. And I believe whoever they bring in is immediately an upgrade because I think that team won kind of in spite of him. And we see the difference right now in that Michigan schedule and what they were able to go through in the top end talent of the Big Ten versus the bottom end talent of the Big Ten. That guy was able to coach that team to 9-3, lost to all three teams that he was supposed to lose to handily, and beat everybody else because just got a more talented team. It certainly wasn't because he's a savvy coach. And whoever comes in is going to be able to do the same thing. And then you just need them to elevate 2 more wins. And that's an 11-1 team. Obviously the schedule changes from year to year, but I looked at their schedule next year. It's very easy as well. And we're going to have these in this big bloated conference until we see more teams elevate their game, elevate their spending. And we're seeing it, right? We're seeing it. Michigan State just had $400 million, a donation for $400 million into the program, hire Pat Fitzgerald. So that's one program on the up and up. Wisconsin now giving Luke Fickell money to work with. I think that's another program we'll see on the rise. Those are 2 in the bottom 6 of the league this year. And the more we see that, the tighter that gap becomes and the more even the schedules become across the conference. So that's a good thing for competitive balance. As for the roster and what could potentially happen here with that roster while they're hiring a new coach or attempting to hire a new coach, the rule as far as like who they're going to get as a coach, like I have no idea. Like obviously you guys know, you've heard all the names. It's all the same names that we're hearing recycled in the Penn State search, right? Like who knows? But if you get a Jed Fish, right, someone like that, like immediate improvement. Eli Drinkwitz, any of these dudes you get is immediately a big improvement. Some more than others, but the job is extremely desirable, right? Like if we were ranking the open market jobs that you had in this cycle, I rank these things. I said this yesterday without any thought at all. Like this is immediately the number 2 job for me, right after LSU. This is above Florida, Penn State, Auburn. It's right after LSU. This is an incredibly desirable job to coaches. Whether you as a Buckeye fan believe that or not, this is an incredibly desirable job, particularly when you look at the money being infused. And if they want to hire a big time coach, he's going to get a commitment from them. We're talking about that money was being infused with Sharon Moore. What if you get a big name coach? All of a sudden, you get some big time commitments from some people with some serious money. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And they were able to put together a top 5 class with Sharon Moore with the money that was infused into the program. You get a big name, or a big name comes to the table and says, I want this or I'm not coming. Those guarantees are coming. And that's why it's such a desirable job in addition to the history and everything else. So I think they're going to hire somebody that's going to make us say, yeah, I don't really like that. So ultimately, not a good thing for Ohio State. But as for the roster right now, the rule used to be if a coach left or was fired, the players could leave immediately, the players on the roster. This year, there is a new rule. And we've talked about this rule as we've talked about USF with Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline, in a 5-day struggle since he inked the contract to try to talk those players at USF into staying. He's got 5 days. The new coach who was hired at Michigan has the same thing. Those players can't leave now. They have got to wait for 5 days after that new coach is hired, and he'll have an opportunity to go choose the guys that are really, really important and say, listen, I need to keep you on the roster. What's it going to take? Build a relationship as fast as he can, etc. Now, there is a caveat. January 2nd, and we are, December 11th? January 2nd, the portal opens. And if they don't hire a coach before the portal opens, that 5-day window's out the door. So they need to move, and they need to move fast to avoid that. And that's critical. Definitely critical. As for their 11th ranked recruiting class, we've seen several job openings this cycle, right? And a lot was made about Penn State losing all but 2 of their recruits. They had a good recruiting class. They lost all but 2. That was unusual. And that was the result of a couple things. Number one, it took so long. Number two, James Franklin took 10 of them, right? They fired James Franklin so early that he was able to go get a new job, get set up, and then poach those guys. And number three, their athletic director, Pat Kraft, an absolute bonehead who told Jackson Ford, a top 300 recruit, ultimately, it's up to the new coach whether you're going to have a spot or not. And if he told that to a top 300 recruit, Jackson Ford, a stud defender from the state of Pennsylvania who chose Penn State over Ohio State, if he told that to him, he certainly told that to other players as well. So he wasn't actively attempting to keep the class together. All those reasons made that Penn State situation unique. On the flip side, when we look at LSU and when we look at Florida, both of those schools were able to retain over half of their committed players. Really, I think over 75%. And that was from the time they lost their coach to the time they hired a new one. I believe Michigan will do the same. I think that they will retain at least half of this class, probably more, probably closer to 75%. Now, there's obviously a few guys in that class that Ohio State was after very hard. Of course, the number one running back in the country, Savion Hyder, was one of them. And he chose Michigan over Tennessee and Ohio State. But really, that battle was a Michigan-Tennessee battle in the end because Ohio State was not coming close to the offer both of those guys were offering. Savion chose UM in large part due to the money, but also due to the long relationship that he has with Tony Alford from the time he was at Ohio State. Ohio State, under Tony Alford, in the running back room, was Savion Hyder's top dog when he first kind of burst onto the national scene. And Tony and that entire staff wiped out. They're gone, man. There is no flipping way that anybody in any position of power up there wants to see anybody that has anything to do with the Sherrone Moore, Jim Harbaugh era anymore. And that most likely includes Ward Manuel as well, who has been the athletic director that's overseen all of this crap, all of it, including Juwan Howard. Everything's got to go. You got to wipe this crap out and start from scratch. New coach comes in. He brings everything with him. By the way, Jim Knowles out at Penn State. Matt Campbell doesn't want him. He's been hired at Tennessee already. So he goes down to Tennessee. Not quite the way he thought that was going to work out when he started off by strong-arming Ohio State to try to get a new deal. Goes to Penn State as the conquering hero to take them to a national championship run. Not the way that worked out. But the coaches at Michigan, I'd be stunned if they weren't all wiped out. Now, does Ohio State have a shot with some of these guys? Do they have a shot with Savion Hyder? There was a rumor that leaked that said Savion Hyder looking to get out of his national letter of intent or his Big Ten financial aid agreement, whatever it is they signed now. Hyder retweeted that and said, "You just be lying," or something to that effect. So that wasn't true, but that doesn't mean he's not. And while I think that Ohio State will reach out, I think that Tennessee will really reach out. And Tennessee, should Hyder leave, is the more likely destination if Hyder chooses to flip. And that is ideal for Ohio State because Tennessee is the biggest threat to Ohio State for their top running back target in 2027, David Gabriel George, who plays his high school ball in Tennessee. And if Tennessee puts up for Savion Hyder, all of a sudden they are much less likely to put up a whole lot of money and a big offer and go full steam ahead for David Gabriel George, putting Ohio State fully in the driver's seat for David Gabriel George, who I like better, and I think the Buckeyes like better anyway. So if Hyder flips to Tennessee, big win for the Buckeyes. Much less likely to flip out of that class, in my opinion, 5-star edge rusher Carter Meadows, who chose Michigan over Ohio State and Penn State. I believe that he liked Michigan all along, and I believe that he likes Michigan and his parents like Michigan because they value the University of Michigan. And Michigan valued him very generously. And I think that ultimately there's a lot of guys in this class who want to be at Michigan, not specifically for Sherrone Moore. Now, not all of them, but there are quite a few. Just as if Ryan Day were out at Ohio State, there would be a lot of guys who remain committed to Ohio State. Similar situation up there. And that's why I don't think ultimately they're going to lose a lot of guys. And I think that this is going to go relatively quick with the guy that they hire because it's got to. They don't want to let it go past January. So there are 2 other guys that Ohio State recruited a bit in that class, neither of whom they recruited a ton, neither of whom I think they'd be very interested in now. Obviously, they've got a quarterback in the class in Luke Fahey. They did recruit Brady Smigel. He is the quarterback recruit. At one point was a top 5 or 6 quarterback in the class, has dropped considerably. So they're not going to want him. Marky Walbridge was an offensive lineman. Really like him that Ohio State recruited a bit, but it's been a long time and they got 5 offensive linemen in the class. I don't see that. Not for Marky. There is some potential with Andre Clark Jr., 6 foot 180, cornerback, blue chipper, top 200 kid, already publicly said essentially he's open for business. He really loved that coaching staff. And when we look at the Ohio State class, there's a hole there, right? CJ Bronaugh didn't end up flipping. That was the cornerback that the Buckeyes wanted from Florida. He ends up sticking with Florida. So is there potential there for Ohio State to go after him? Seems like it would be something they should look at. Maybe we'll look at. They also have a top 150 offensive lineman in Malachi Lee, who is a true tackle. Buckeyes did not recruit him. Kid out of Hawaii. He's a dog, big kid, true tackle body. And when we look at the class, like, yeah, there's 5 offensive linemen, but really Sam Greer, the only true tackle. And this is a kid who is offered by everybody except the Buckeyes. And maybe Tyler Bowen kicks the tires on that. Kid from Hawaii committed to Michigan, not much difference to swing down to Columbus. So potential there. But that's about it for what's in their class that I think would be interesting from the Ohio State perspective. And when we look at the Ohio State class, I think they've done a hell of a job. Obviously, when we talk about the cornerback class and losing CJ Bronaugh, you lost the ready-made DB class that was in the state of Ohio in the class of 2026 with Rock Hill, Vic Singleton, Jacob Weatherspoon. Rock goes to USC. Vic goes to Texas A&M. Weatherspoon flips out of the class and goes to North Carolina. And up until 3 years ago, if we were having this discussion, I'd have said what I've always said, that Ohio State and Louisiana, uniquely positioned as the 2 hardest states to pull recruits out of, because they are very successful programs that are the one show in town, and every kid that grows up there wants to go there. Most schools didn't even waste their time. Certainly not the case anymore, as Ohio State in this class alone has Blaine Bradford, Darius McKinley, both of whom have brothers literally on the LSU roster, which is just insane. And when we look at Alabama, for instance, as well, you got Emmanuel Ruffin out of Alabama, Bessemer, Alabama this cycle, defensive tackle. And last cycle, 2 top 100 players in Turbo Rogers and Zion Grady out of the state of Alabama. So the walls have been torn down, not just in the state of Ohio, in Louisiana as well. And if Ohio and Louisiana are torn down, everybody's torn down is essentially the point. And the class of 2026 the Buckeyes with 11 recruits from Ohio. That's the most since 2016, and that's awesome. But when we look at the top 10 players in the state of Ohio, the Buckeyes wanted 6 of them. Went after 6 of them hard. They landed 3. And 3, those 3 coincidentally were the defensive back class that we talked about with Weatherspoon, Rock Hill, Vic Singleton. And the previous year, out of the top 10 players in the state of Ohio, the Buckeyes wanted 8. And they got 4. Missed out on 2 of the top 3 in Trey McNutt and Justin Hill. Justin Hill playing as a true freshman at Alabama. That one was huge. They also missed out on Dorian Brew, who considered himself an Ohio high school football player, even though he went down to Texas and played his senior year down there. At one time was silently committed to Ohio State. And he ends up at Oregon with McNutt. But 5 big-time defensive backs. And that is a position that Ohio State, that the state of Ohio has been producing very well with Rock and Vic and Spoon and Dorian Brew and Trey McNutt. And in the previous class, Tim Walton locked down the top 2 players in the state of Ohio, Aaron Scott and Bryce West. Those are Buckeyes. So as we head into the class of 2027, after Ohio State had missed out on this run of defensive backs from in-state, you roll into the class of 2027, and the number 2 rated player in the state of Ohio, Ace Alston, down in Cincinnati. Another one down there, Cincinnati Anderson, always the worst place in Ohio to have an Ohio stud. And when it came to Ace, this is a guy who's, I think his dad's from Alabama. Mark and I talked about this on a Skull session. Neither of us ever thought that this was the type of kid who was an Ohio kid and thought Ohio State had an advantage with him in Ohio. Turns out that's true. A top 100 kid, 5'11", 175, and he made his commitment, I believe, on Monday or Tuesday, and he committed to Notre Dame, making it now the top 6 defensive backs in the state of Ohio in the last 3 years. All 10 players, blue chips, not a single one to Ohio State. 6 in a row. And the reality of this is, in the NIL era, we are going to lose a lot more Ohio prospects than we ever used to. There's no doubt about that. But to lose so many at one position is kind of bizarre. And if I'm being totally honest, of the big schools that were after Ace Alston, Ohio State in their pursuit was behind Oregon, Notre Dame, Michigan, Tennessee, Auburn when they even offered him. Same thing with Vic Singleton. The Rock Hill recruitment was nowhere near the level of effort that Oregon and USC put into it from Ohio State. The McNutt thing was a totally different situation. But it used to just be so rare to lose top players out of the state. And in fact, it was so rare to lose players out of the state that when I started this show, which has been less than 2 years, we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary here pretty soon. When I first started, I did a show about Trey McNutt, who was suing the OHSAA about 7-on-7. And his lawsuit eventually got that overturned, that whole spring ball situation. And I had been talking to his mom for about a week. And based on those conversations, you know, dad played at Ohio State, mom went to Ohio State. We talked a lot. And she, just the general feel that I got every time the college choice came up and some other stuff that came up, there's no way he was coming to Ohio State. I knew it. I was sure of it. But when I said it, it was so ridiculous to the people who heard me say that a kid who dad and mom went to Ohio State from Shaker Heights, it was so ridiculous to hear that kid wasn't going to be at Ohio State that I got heckled for months about that. I got heckled. That was a crazy thought. It was a crazy thought just 2 years ago that a big time prospect from Ohio with ties to Ohio State would leave the state. And now it's so commonplace that this Ace Alston news totally flew under the radar, that the number 2 rated prospect in the state gone. Nobody even talked about it. That is how used to it we are already. And that's how much recruiting has changed recently. And like I always say, man, I don't like it, but so long as you get a like player in return, okay. If you get a better player, even better. But that's not always been the case. It's not always the case. It didn't happen in the 2025 class. That's the Devin Sanchez cornerback class, where the second corner in the class is Jordan Woods, who is a total project guy. Certainly didn't happen in that class. That's the only other corner in that class. And when we look at this class of 2026, Ohio State still wanting another cornerback in this class, and there were 3 in Ohio that went out of state. And it doesn't look like as if there's going to be a third. Now, when we talk about where Alston went to Notre Dame, first time in a long time that Notre Dame in Ohio State head-to-head, Notre Dame has won in a class. In 2026, Notre Dame beats Ohio State. They're killing it in recruiting. And obviously that's the Marcus effect. That's the money effect. But it's something as we look at Midwest recruiting. It'll be interesting to see what Matt Campbell does. Obviously, Michigan, they went from the number 5 class to the number 11th class. But I really think if they get a big time coach, they're going to get, or a name brand coach, they're going to get some cash infusion, some promises, and we're going to see them jet back up again because they're going to spend to make sure it happens. The Midwest recruiting has gotten tougher in the conference. We've also now got to deal with USC with the number 1 class, Oregon, who also finished ahead of Ohio State. So if we look at Notre Dame, Oregon, USC, all finished ahead of Ohio State, it's gotten a lot tougher, but it's about who you get, not who you don't get. And I really like the Ohio State class of 2026. We will break down those groups, those position groups here coming up soon. When we look at the state of Ohio, Ace Alston has a teammate who the Buckeyes have offered. James Laurinaitis has offered, and Antoine Higgins. He is a top 10 linebacker in the country, and that one will be pretty big moving forward. Other guys that the Buckeyes have already got in the class from the state of Ohio in 2027. You got Kellen Weimer, the top offensive lineman. You got Mason Wilt, another offensive lineman. Jameer Brown, committed so far. Those 3 out of the state. Other dudes in the state of Ohio that the Buckeyes are really high on and have offered: Antoine Higgins, who we just talked about, Kalel Johnson. He's actually the top tackle per most of the rankings. But he is also out of Cincinnati, Archbishop Moeller now, originally from Princeton, I believe. And if they're able to land Kalel, that would put them already at 3 blue chip offensive linemen. So that would be great. He's a Buckeye lean right now. You've also got 2 tight ends that they've offered that they really like. Number 1, D'Angelo White out of St. Joe's, Bo Jackson's teammate, 6'6" behemoth athlete, kind of in the mold of Jelani Thurman. And they've also offered RJ Day's teammate, Jordan Karhoff, who is a blue chip tight end. You might have seen RJ throwing that game-winning touchdown in the playoffs. 6'4", 215 tight end. Karhoff caught that. I really like him. And obviously this kid plays with Ryan Day's son. It should be easy to nail him. But D'Angelo, got to lock him down. Defensive lineman, Reynaldo Perez out of Columbus Academy. Keyshawn Telfair. Now, this is a cornerback out of Euclid, blue chipper, 6', 160. And we will see if the Buckeyes can keep one of these DBs home. But the biggest priority in this class, now that Brian Hartline is gone, is locking down Jameer Brown. And there are some other guys in the state of Ohio the Buckeyes haven't offered yet. We will go over some of those guys that I think they would be wise to offer, as we now know that the way they're going to go about this is carrying a couple extra guys in each class from the state. There's a couple borderline dudes, and of course there'll be some more that pop later on, but some that I like as well. So that'll be our show today. I appreciate you guys for joining me. Please do remember to subscribe if you have not subscribed already. Tell me in the comments, as the Buckeyes are going to play the winner of Texas A&M in Miami, and I want to know, who do you prefer? Do you want to step on Miami's hopes and dreams again, or do you want the opportunity to beat the fourth SEC team in a row, which would be Texas A&M, which would then lead Ohio State most likely to Georgia with an opportunity to go 5 straight against the SEC after all the crap we've heard from them for so many years for the poor record against them in the postseason? To be able to win 5 in a row would be fantastic, and then have another opportunity to start off the year against Texas again, potentially winning 3 in a row against Texas. Oh, it would be beautiful, beautiful. So let me know that. That's the question I got for you guys. Also, of course, weigh in on anything you want. I do appreciate you guys rocking with me all week here at Juck on Bucks. Have a fantastic day. I'll talk to you soon. Juck out.